Welcome to BlackUSA.news Morning Show. I'm your host, William Honolulu Jr. Join us as we explore the news and opinions that impact our community. We break down how the major stories have a very personal, local, and racial impact. No topic is off limits, but even if the conversation gets rough, we're always going to keep it real.
Greetings and salutations, all my friends out there in internet land. I am William Honolulu Jr., and I have the privilege and honor of serving as the host of the Black USA News Morning Show. Welcome. Oh, am I stuck? Okay, I think I might be having a little bit of problems with my technology. Y'all know how it goes sometimes. It's what happens when you. But we're going to keep it moving, keep it pushing. Let's see. Oh, very happy to have a very special guest with us today, Pastor Shannon Wright of the Urban Engagement Initiative. She has been a staunch advocate for education in Baltimore City and the surrounding areas, and she's a candidate for mayor. She's a Republican, and she's Black, and she's a woman. So I'm very interested in talking to her about kind of how those things intersect, the passion for education and how not necessarily identity politics, but how her identity plays into her politics. But want to give a big shout out, as we always do, to the squad. A big love to Brandy Raymar, our assistant producer, and Grace Aweka, my personal assistant, basically my handler. You know, I need help staying focused. But I want to say a big shout out to the super producer, Kyle Morgan. Crazy Horse is the reason I call him Crazy Horse. We go back like babies and pacifiers. So you got nicknames and stuff like that. But I want to give him a big shout out because this series that we're doing on politics and elections is really inspired not just by him, but by his dad. Let me show you a picture of his dad. Earl Morgan. Earl Morgan was a champion of Black media, of Black news. Put this up. You can go check out a tribute of Mr. Morgan. When I tell you that Mr. Morgan was part of Black journalism before being a Black journalist was cool. He did it in the time of civil rights in Jersey City, New Jersey, and he was responsible for exposing some of this more significant corruption that was happening in the government. He was part of that fourth estate, and they talk about, the separation between the branches of government. But one of the reasons that the Black press is important is because, let's be clear, back in the day, hell, even sometimes today, the white press doesn't take the needs of the Black community into consideration in a meaningful way. We don't keep it 100. We might not keep it 100, but we will keep it 85, and that's real. And so what we have learned to do is to rely on the Black press to help us tell our story, help us archive the history that we have experienced. And people like Mr. Morgan are the reason that I can be here and talk about these things now. And we wanted to continue in that type of vein. Because, one of the things that we don't want to be are the people who chase the big, sexy stories all the time. Because while everybody is covering Joe Biden and what he did here and there, Joe Biden doesn't have a lot to do with what happens in my life in Baltimore. The mayor does. The people the mayor hires do. Those people are important in developing a safer city, a better educated student group. And so that's what we do. That's what we're doing today. We're bringing candidates at the local level. This is the start of bringing candidates at the local level to the fore so that we can hear from them, so that we can ask them questions and they can be on the record and tell us what we can expect from them. Because I got to be honest, I'm getting tired of being lied to. So all that to say, I want to say a big shout out to our super producer and thank you to him and his father for all he does. And, rest in peace, Mr. Morgan. I want to give a big shout out also to Breadcoin. You all know that we have partnered with Breadcoin as Black USA News because they do amazing work in the community. Breadcoin is an organization that utilizes the relationships and the donations of others to feed people who are in poverty, who are unstably housed, who are in food deserts. The way that it works is that the donations that Bitcoin gets, they convert those into they convert those for the value of the coin, and people can use the coins to go into participating restaurants and get food. The thing that I love about Breadcoin and the way their business model works is that it allows people to maintain their dignity during the process of addressing issues around hunger. There are a lot of programs that mean well and actually do good work, but it requires people to be poor enough, to look poor enough to get services, and we don't believe that that is the way that people should be helped. So we are grateful to partner with Breadcoin in all the work that they do. Make sure that you all go hit them up at breadcoin.org. Um, and support these organizations that are doing great work for great people. All right, what are we doing now? Pull down Breadcoin. So you all know I have show notes, and you all know I get passionate when it comes to about subjects about education. So I'm trying to make sure I get all my show notes, say all the things I need to say, so I can focus on talking to Pastor Wright about what's going on and what her campaign is going to be doing and all of those things. What's bad? No, here she goes. All right. Without any further ado, without any what do you say? I don't know. I guess further ado. Okay. All right. Did I get it done? Did I get it done? Okay,
You
great.
got it done.
Oh, Pastor Wright, how are you doing today?
I am well, thank you. And yourself?
I am doing very well. I am very grateful for you being here and really having a conversation with us about your run for mayor, and also about the Urban Engagement Initiative. But before
Okay.
we go ahead with all of that, why don't you tell the people a little bit about you?
Wow. Okay. I live in Baltimore, clearly. Um, Born in New York, migrated south. Uh, I was raised to believe in giving back to your community. My
Mhm.
mom used to do a lot of community work, and she was on a ton of different boards. And I used to regularly go with her to different board meetings and work on different projects and just kind of help her do all the things that she did. So it's kind of what I was raised to do.
Mhm.
I kind of took it to a different level when our kids came along and we realized how much work really needed to be done in a lot of the communities. It's because of our kids that we really started working in the education advocacy space.
Okay.
I didn't like what was going on in their schools, and folks said, well, a lot of what's decided in the classroom happens from the Board of Education, and mayhaps if you are so displeased, you ought to be a part of the solution and run for office to change it. I
Mhm.
said, oh, okay, challenge accepted.
There was a threat, like if you want to do something, step up, and you're like, no, okay, bet, okay, I appreciate that.
Okay, so let's do it. And that's kind of really how it started. Um, I honestly don't know if I would be where I am had not the things happened that did.
Mm, okay, cool. Um,
So to give a little bit more clarity,
okay.
we were able to work out the situation with our kids.
Mhm.
And a very good friend of mine said, well, that's great for you, but what about the other people that can't
Mhm.
navigate that system and don't know the things that they need to do, don't know the rights that they have? And
Right.
I said, oh, okay. So
That
y'all want me to do more? Got you. Y'all want me to put some structure to be a pain in the butt and being the squeaky wheel and the squeaky door that gets the oil. Okay.
that is one of
That's
the things. That is one of the unfortunate parts about many of our systems. They are designed to address problems, not to make things better. Before we get too far in, I want to just say this to you. I try to say it to all politicians, well, not politicians, but candidates. Thank you. Uh, because regardless of anything else, it takes a lot of courage to step in front of the public, to kind of lay your life bare for scrutiny and things like that, because you believe in what you're doing, because you want to make things better. So I always wanted to say, I am greatly appreciative of people who are willing to do that, because that is a sacrifice that you all are making for the community. So thank you.
So to be clear, I ran for mayor in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
What 24 looks like? Not sure yet.
Okay. I apologize. I'm trying to push you up, but I apologize. I'm gonna step back.
No. It's okay. It's okay. A lot of folks have been asking. So are you gonna do it again? And I'm in a place of prayer and meditation on that one.
Okay.
It is a difficult road, for sure. We'll see. But one thing I do know for sure is, whether it's as a candidate or just as someone that lives here in Baltimore, I'm going to continue to work to make this city better.
Cool in the gang. So let's talk about some of the work that you've been doing and that you are doing to make the city better. Tell us a little bit about what's happening at the Urban Engagement Initiative.
So Urban Engagement Initiative focuses on three things: food insecurity, education, economic opportunities. Everybody wants to come on TV and talk about the crime in the city. Crime happens organically when people don't know where their next meal is coming from, don't know if they're going to be able to keep a roof over their head, shoes on their kids' feet, and what the future is going to look like. That lack of faith that your future is going to be better than your past diminishes the hope that your future will be better than your past, and increases the desperation that your future might not be better than your past,
or that you might not have a future at all.
Well, and when that hope shrinks, and that desperation or question grows, you start to look at things that you wouldn't ordinarily look at, you weren't raised to look at, and you start thinking about things that you really ought not be. So when we talk about crime here in the city, some things we need to do. If we want to really lower crime in a sustainable way, not a bring in more police and state troopers and beat people over the head kind of way, we need to do things like increase access to quality good food in all the communities, in all the neighborhoods.
Absolutely.
We need to do things like make sure our education system is actually educating children in a way that when they get out, they can either continue their education or be gainfully employed, whether it's for somebody else or in their own endeavors. But we're not doing those things. When you want people to have feel a sense of ownership and pride in where they are and take better care of it, you need to look at the quality of life things like, how many potholes do I have to go through to get from one side of the city to the other? How many alleys am I going to see where trash wasn't picked up? There are certain things that give people the warm fuzzies and make them take pride in where they live and who they are, more so when you do the things that need to be done.
Now, to your point, I think one of the things that also needs to be brought into this conversation is that we expect a level of discipline for people who have fewer resources than we do for people who don't. So an example I want to use, like you were talking about education. There is a vast difference between somebody who has to take their kids to school, or has to be comfortable enough with their kids catching 2 or 3 buses to school as the mornings get shorter. I mean, the mornings are darker and the evenings are darker. That is a whole thing you now have to think about, that you don't have an opportunity. I mean, that stuff, that's another, that if you're thinking about your children's safety in that way, you are not thinking about some of the other things about how to enhance the quality of your life. Even looking at the child, if the child is taking 2 or 3 buses home because there's no good neighborhood school, that is also that time frame. They're not spending that time on homework, they're spending that time in commuting. And so there are other things about, but they should still, if you don't have, I'm sorry, I get excited about this. That's one of the show notes I have to look at, like, calm down, think about your point, because it is so critical. And I absolutely agree with what you're saying about some of these fundamental pieces that drive the decision making. But if you have been socialized to believe that you don't have a future because nobody else around you does, or everybody's future seems random. I remember I was doing some work in DC about 15 years ago at the Covenant House, And I think this illustrates it best. One of the children I was working with doing some radio interviews, he said, well, I had 3 best friends, now I only have 2, because one of them got shot on the way home. But, that happens or whatever. I'm sorry, no.
Mm-mm.
For him, though, but think about what that means about his ideas about permanence, about attachments, about being engaged, what life looks like. Because there were 4 of them, now they're 3. There's no rhyme or reason why they're 3. So why would you even believe you have a future if, as a 10-year-old, you have come to the point where you are conditioned to believe that whether your survival is based on a random set of circumstances? How do you process that as a student? But that needs to be part of the conversation. These social emotional pieces.
It does. It absolutely does. You can't expect a child to sit in a classroom and be prepared to learn when but I mean, let's be real about this. Most grown folks don't want to take 2 or 3 of any kind of method of transportation to get wherever they got to go to get a job. Myself, I don't want a long commute. Why would you think? Because it doesn't set you in the right place to be effective when you get there. So why would we think children would be able to master that and then be able to sit in that classroom in a place where they're ready to learn? There are certain things that are counterintuitive that are happening here. 2 or 3 buses to get to a school. Some secretary of transportation, somebody need to look at that, work that out, because that does not make sense. You by time you go through the things that you go through, taking multiple types of transportation, your good place you might have been in from starting your day with prayer and meditation is a little bit thinner. Okay, so
who's the time?
So to expect children to be able to do that, weather that well, and then be in a place of ready to learn, we're not starting off right.
And to the point that you made about the dichotomies between how we believe children, these random little people with no experience, no discipline or whatever, what we expect from them, we don't even expect from ourselves. I've heard many a person say, don't talk to me until I had my coffee. But you're okay. A kid should be able to be disciplined on an empty stomach and should be able to show up to class ready to learn. Here's the other part that we don't pay attention to. Why would kids want to go? Recognize that this is by force. Like kids didn't go like, what would be really cool? I would like to spend 8 hours of my day having someone tell me stuff that they will not explain to me how I will use it in my life. I want to go there 8 hours a day, and nobody asked them whether they want to go. We just send them there and then expect them to be okay with it and do what we want. That was the Thomas Dewey model, the tabula rasa. This idea that children are nothing more than us to put our ink blots on. Treating them like humans, I think, and looking at some of the policies that you've advocated and some of the positions that you've taken, you've not articulated this way, but it sounds like you're trying to put more humanity back into the educational system.
I'm trying to put more humanity back into a whole bunch of systems, quite frankly. Quite frankly. Let me tell you, see, my mom was a single teen mom. We lived in the projects with my grandparents when I was born. So the difference from me and the folks that you hear about and see on the news is that my mother learned, she put the cart before the horse, but she learned, okay, education is the golden passport to get us where we should have been from the first place.
Right.
So when we talk about breaking the cycle of poverty, when we talk about breaking all these cycles, you got to know what tool you need to break that thing.
Well, let's before we go to the tool, because I think sometimes the problem is people only look at the tools that they have and try to use those. Because what did the proverb say? If the only tool you have, or the saying, the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. So let's take a step back and go to root cause. So what do you think are the causes of, and you've mentioned the crime, the poverty, and the lack of opportunity in education, but it's kind of, for me, I struggle with that. It seems cyclical. Like we say it's the crime and the poverty that leads to poor education, but then we say it's poor education that leads to crime and poverty, and it becomes this thing, and it keeps us having this circular conversation with no tangent to get off of. And by the way, big shout out to Shonda Duncan, one of the best math teachers in Baltimore City, because I remember the word tangent. So go ahead, give her a big shout out on that. But we don't find a way to get off of this cycle. So let's talk about specifically education, factoring out all of the more socially contextual things, because again, if we start talking about that, I feel like we're going to get into that circle. But let's talk specifically pulling education out. What is the root cause of the challenges that we're having, specifically in Baltimore City? Because I know you're very familiar with that.
So I'm gonna be real with you.
Yeah.
A lot of times when you give real solutions,
people don't like it because they're invested in the make pretend. I'll say it for you. People don't want to hear anything real because their entire identities, their jobs, their society, their lives are based on lies. They are based on the fact that they are not good, but they look good. They feel good. And so we move away from the substance of things to talk more about the style. You don't have to worry. Honestly, a lot of the world is like Shape Up. What is that shapewear thing? Spanx.
Yep.
We do a lot of Spanx stuff. It's not we want to lose the weight. We just want to make it look like we lost the weight. We don't want the education system to be good. We just want higher test scores or something so we can say we look better. We look as opposed. Okay. Show notes. I apologize.
So if we want to really get into that thing for a minute, you want the test scores to look to make it look like the district is doing what it's supposed to be doing, because quite frankly, the benefit for the district is money. Now, the students, however, get the short end of the deal because they're not being properly educated. So if we really want to fix education and start to fix crime and have a long-term plan for the city, every school in the city needs to adopt a community school model. And what that means is you have the academic programs, K through 12, but you also have the community wraparound programs for the adults at home. Because if you get that classroom going the way it needs to go, and the curriculum the way it needs to be, and the resources the way they need to be, and send that child back to a home where they may have one parent, they may have two, that parent may not have graduated.
They may have no parents at the house.
You got that right too. Then we're teaching them, bringing them here to send them back out to go here. So we need that community school wraparound model so that the parents, the caregivers, whomever is at home has the opportunity to learn some of the things that they may not have learned, because this problem in Baltimore City is generational. So we want to break the cycle. The children now are being raised by folks that went through the same thing, that were raised by folks that went through the same thing. So if we want to really fix the thing, you got to catch the kids here that are in school and include services for the generation or two before them that also went through the same broken system. Or we ain't gonna fix nothing.
Well, part of the challenge that I believe exists is what you're talking about makes perfect sense, but it's not the system by design. If we look back to one of the main features of a public education system is mandatory attendance. This idea that, students have to show up or whatever. The first mandatory attendance law in the United States was in Massachusetts in 1647, and it was called the Old Deluder Satan School Act. And it was specifically designed to teach these street urchins how to behave in proper Protestant society. And also they realized that if they taught them how to read the Bible and how to not how to read, I apologize, how to understand the Bible the way that they wanted to, they would have greater control. And they also realized that it would make them more profitable employees, make them better employees. And I think our system is a replicant of that, because I think we talked about before the show, is that whenever they start talking about curricula, start talking about what needs to be done or the future of education, it has to be tied to commerce. And you mentioned it before, there are so many people who are already invested in the money, because you have educators who literally, if students got all of their stuff together today, they would have no jobs tomorrow and no other skills. And that scares many of them. If we're going to talk about some real things, that is part of the underlying challenge, is that you're right. The focus is not on building competent or building good people, not building effective thinkers. Actually, what the system is designed to do is to reduce the ability to think. They teach things by rote. Okay, I have a show note that tells me I need to calm down again because you need to talk more. I apologize. Okay, I get excited about this stuff because my kids went through Baltimore City Public Schools, and they are amazing. My oldest graduated with a 12 something on the SAT, 3+ GPA, got himself into Temple. My youngest graduated with a 5.08 GPA and 1560 on the 1540 on the SAT, and is a physicist at North Carolina A&T. So don't get it twisted. Baltimore City has results, and if nothing else, my kids aren't the only ones. I don't try to pretend like my kids are the exception in Baltimore City. But what I find has happened with a lot of these students that are successful is that it has sometimes not a lot to do with school. It has a lot more to do with these things that you're talking about, the social context, the rapport. One lady whose child was parallel to my oldest, the reason that her child was parallel to him was because that every time we found some information, we gave it to her about, this is the program we're sending him to. This is the program we're sending him to. She didn't have those resources, but she just kept applying after us, and her daughter was able to follow along. Had graduated, is doing wonderfully, but these are the types of things I think you're talking about in this community school model, and it's taking the, because if she hadn't met us in daycare, would she have even had those options? Like, that is too random. And her daughter's amazing. That is too random. And so I appreciate what you're talking about, the community school model and how that can transform lives. And I love one of the reasons I have this show is that I got a lot to say about a lot of stuff. That's why they keep giving me show notes and say like, hey, you remember you have a guest. They're not just, because if you don't, okay, so I'll tell you about my team. I love them, but they are people who called me and checked. They were like, because if you're just going to keep talking, we're just going to put a picture of somebody on the screen because it doesn't matter. I was like, oh, okay, it's that bad or something.
Well, I mean, the idle hands of the devil's workshop. So I have my crocheting here. I'm good. I got my crocheting right here, my coffee over here. We all good.
I appreciate you. But so again, I grateful for your points, and I agree with them, and it's so exciting to have a conversation with somebody, that resonates with me. So yeah, I'm excited.
So I just, like I said, when you want to have the higher level conversations in terms of what is the best blueprint for economic development of the city, when you want to have those kinds of conversations about enticing folks to come in and want to develop, and they want to talk about their rate of return, you got to take some steps back and get some of the basic foundation blocks built up right. Because when folks talk about whether or not they want to move their business to Baltimore City and bring an economic opportunity for the city, and then for the people that it will employ in the city, they look at a couple things. Real estate values, whether they're going up as they're supposed to, stagnant or down. Schools, whether they are good or whether they're going to have to include the cost of private school tuition in their budget. Taxes, and the overall crime and climate of the city. Now, if we really want to, now, for anybody that's elected that's watching right now, the model y'all use here in this city for economic development is a little bit askew. Y'all give away the whole table, kit and caboodle, to entice somebody to come here.
Don't say the city, say the state, because I mean,
okay.
I'm willing. You know what? You say the city, I'll pull it all the way back out to the state. Okay, I co-sign what she about to say about y'all, but I say it for the state. Go ahead.
Y'all give away everything on the table, including the table, to entice people to come here to build businesses, when if you actually did the things you're elected to do in the manner in which you are elected to do them, the city and the state would organically grow. It would be sustainable growth, and you wouldn't have to worry about whose budget you're going to beg for, whether it's state or federal, to be able to do the things that y'all fail to do through your policies here in the city. Yeah, I said it.
And you are absolutely, I agree with you, because one of the things that happens is that we are so pick me. We're so pick me. It is like and part of the challenge is that the metrics that you identified are the metrics that define. That is part of the problem, and that is what shapes our society, and that's how we dehumanize it.
Yes. And see, that's why you got to do two things. You got to work within the parameters of the system the way it is. At the same time, while you're working to get where you want to be in the existing system, you're redesigning that system so that at the end of that process, you are at the place you wanted to be in a system that actually works. You can't just do one or the other.
No, I agree. So let's be clear. I do appreciate that, and I appreciate the fact that you understand the nuances of the continuum that needs to happen. One of the challenges that I've had talking to people about advocacy is that everybody believes that their advocacy is the advocacy. It's like, no. I work with a lot of I work with some national Black nonprofits, and some local ones as well. And one of the pieces of feedback that we often get on one side for the nonprofits who are in the suites and really trying to work behind the scenes and making money actually moving money into communities, the feedback that they get is like, you all aren't in the community, nobody knows what you're doing, you must suck. But on the other side, when you have organizations that are in the streets who are really pushing, the argument is that, well, we haven't seen any progress, now y'all just out here yelling and blah, 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 and y'all suck. Both of those are necessary. Like back in the day, that's one of the reasons that the Urban League and the NAACP had so much progress during their heydays, is because the NAACP's role was to get out there and make people so incredibly uncomfortable that the powers that be went to the Urban League, was like, okay, what can we do to make this outside go away? And the population got better. But here's the problem. The people who were doing that, many of them were doing it because of the mission. But the system corrupted the mission by offering a whole bunch of money. And now you have people, this is a dollars and cents game. This is about, and you will do what's necessary to get the dollars and cents. Because don't forget, a lot of the things we complain about are how people pay their rent. The same way that we talk about these kids out in the corner selling drugs. Actually, Lisa Pierce was on with Donnie Glover earlier today. And what she said is that as she's been working with communities of disinvested athletes, what they are finding is that these athletes are becoming the drug dealers. Why? Because they have market potential in their communities, but no other opportunities. And so if you don't provide other opportunities, even your best, your student athletes, not just the athletes who happen to be students, but your student athletes, they are given fewer choices.
And that's why our focus, education, food insecurity, economic opportunities. The three have to work together if you really want to change neighborhoods, communities, and the city as a whole. The three. That's the trinity that needs to work in the natural to be able to move this city forward where it need to be. And, you know, in the Bible, there's a trinity. In different aspects of history, there's a trinity. The trinity that we need in this city right now: education, food security, and economic opportunity.
Yeah. Because you're talking about the fundamental features of humanity. Like, if I am hungry, that's a primary driver. If I'm not safe, if I don't have the resources necessary to provide a home and care for my family, why does any of the rest of this make sense?
Yep.
And then the thing that I do want to say that I have seen, and again, I don't think you articulated it this way, but in your literature and also on the Urban Engagement website, was that you take into consideration kind of the social emotional well-being. But I want to, and in doing that, you attempt to provide dignity in the process. And I want to say that is, I think, in most of the plans that get, and I don't know if you heard the intro I did when I talked about Breadcoin, great organization. But one of the things I love, and one of the reasons that we're working with them, you know, however they want to work, is because they not only provide support to people, but they allow them to maintain their dignity. And what a lot of times the people who want to help, you need to look poor enough. Get yourself a little dirtier. Like, oh, why do you have nice clothes on if you need help? How can you really be a victim of domestic abuse? I don't see any bruises. Like all of these things that if you don't show up looking bad enough, there are some people that don't want to help. And so I again want to say I appreciate the fact that there's nothing that you have, at least nothing I've seen, that suggests that you are requiring people to sacrifice their dignity.
Oh, heck no. Heck no. So some years back, our youngest son had some issues and we required some extra resources to be able to help him through some of his issues. And we went to public assistance. And they said, well, y'all have 4 children and we appreciate that, but this is where you have to be. And I said, okay, I am going back to school this semester. My husband is going back to school next semester. And we are trying to do some things to make sure we don't ever have to come see y'all folk again. They said, oh, well, you can't do that. I said, excuse me? I said, no, you can't do that because we need you to go through one of our approved programs. And if you're working while you're in school, you can't make more than this. I said, well, I'm making more than that now, and I'm still here. So if I can't, y'all aren't about really helping people get where they need to be. You're about breaking the person down, making them feel bad about themselves for having to come to a place where they need help. And that was one of the things I said to my husband. That moment in that place, I said, okay, we're going to do what we need to do for the kids. I will eat a cornflake a night before I come back up in this office and talk to these people and go through this system again. Now, we were able to do that, but I think those lessons, those experiences are also part of why we do what we do today. Nobody should have to feel like they're less of a person because they hit a hard time.
Right.
And in this city, no one should feel like less of a person because the systems have been broken for so long that they don't even know what a whole person should be able to do because they weren't taught it. We don't teach critical thinking. We don't teach people to be able to stand on their own feet. We teach people to get a job and work for somebody else. We don't teach people how to shape their own destiny. We don't get to a place where we can talk about generational wealth because we're talking about situational poverty.
Absolutely.
That's not how it's supposed to be.
You know what? I forgot. I'm gonna tell you where I went wrong today. I did not calibrate my expectations for your title, man. You about to take me to church this morning. Now, I feel good because what you're saying is what's happening. And sometimes for me, this is why they give me so many show notes. It's so frustrating because I'm like, why? Like, if you could just tell me why this is so jacked up across the board. What is the benefit? And the only thing that I keep coming back to is that it maintains itself.
So I'm gonna tell you, no, I'm gonna tell. There's a place. There's a place. Okay. There's a place and a time where things started to shift, and I'm gonna tell you what that is. And most of your audience is not ever gonna want you to have me on your show again, and it's all good.
I love the fact that this is my show, though, so it's okay.
So, at the time, we would talk about and started to really push separation of church and state. And now we're in that place where people believe in church or state. Just because you say something repeatedly and loud, don't make it true. So we got to a place where we actually believe that there needed to be a separation of church and state. Now, the problem with that is when you go to the book of Exodus and you see the first conversation about the beginning roots of a political structure, of a community structure, of a government. It was a conversation between Moses and his father-in-law. And the way that thing was broken down came from the Bible.
Yes.
Now, in the beginning, it was supposed to be folks of faith that were grounded and steeped in that faith to do the right thing according to the God that they believed in. Were supposed to be leaders of the community. But when the folk that weren't believers realized, well, the leaders and the members of the community get a better hut.
Yeah.
More goats, more cattle, more everything. Well, we need to do that. Well, y'all ain't steeped in the faith that's going to make you do the right things for the people. So the separation of church and state was to make sure that the state could corrupt the people and the church. So when you start to get into a place where that whole separation, and then there became that gray area up in between, and you got more churches now that are getting government funding, and that government funding means you have to agree with X, Y, and Z policy, so you can no longer preach according to what it says in the Bible, or what it says in somebody's state code.
That part, can't let that go. The federal government requires them not to be able to preach things. That is not true. It is.
Wait. No. I'm tell you why. I'm gonna tell you why it is. Because there are certain funding avenues that we've gone through to do our community work.
Yes.
And there are guidelines in there of things we have to accept and cannot do and cannot say.
I read the guidelines, and some of the guidelines I wrote. So what I'm saying is, what the guidelines say is that when you are acting outside of a religious perspective, when you're acting like other commercial entities, other programs, you have to follow these rules. If you are going to act out in commercially, if you're going to act out in commerce, if you're going to behave in commerce, you have to behave like this. When you do religious stuff, those things don't apply. But you also can't get you can't get the state money to do religious stuff.
Exactly. But
but
you've got a lot of folks that that don't get the nuance between the two.
But that goes back to your point about critical thinking, not about the separation of church and state. But let me ask you this then.
Well, see, if we had critical thinking, we wouldn't have to worry about separation.
But my thing is, which church should be aligned with the state then? Should it only be the God of Abraham? Or those who worship Allah, should they not have representative government? Should they not be a part of it? Because that's what...
no, see, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying none of that.
But I'm asking you, what are you saying? So if it's the God of Abraham that leads our government, that means that Buddhists, Muslims, and the rest, their God should not have a place in our government as well? Or should all gods?
Yeah, no. You're trying to take me down a road that I didn't turn on.
That's why I'm asking.
Let me be real clear.
I'm sorry, don't do that. What I'm saying is, the language that you are using, normally leads to the place that I just went, and I want to make sure that you are not going there, and that's why I'm giving you an opportunity for clarity.
No. In my Bible, it says, "Judge not, lest ye be judged." So it's not for me to judge any other faith. It is based people of faith. This does not say what your faith is. My job is not to judge somebody's faith. I'm not that.
Absolutely, that's cool. So that's why one of the reasons that I have had a challenge with the arguments around the separation of church and state, because what has happened with people who tend to use, and I'm glad that you are not one of them. I am glad that you are not saying that. But what I have found that people who start to make the argument about the separation of church and state is that when they find morals or values that are not consistent or congruent with their belief system. So, for example, there are Wiccans and heathens, these other types of religions that they are as religious and actually longer than Christianity in many cases, and Judaism. And so, if we are doing the separation of church and state, then the Torah should be one of the governing documents. The Quran should be one of the governing documents. Hell, the Tao Te Ching should be one of the governing documents. And so that's one of the challenges, especially when all of these churches, their doctrines are inconsistent. In the Christian faith, the doctrines are inconsistent. And so that's one of the challenges. And again, I'm really glad that you weren't the whole, if it's not Christian, then
no.
And that's why I wanted to make sure, because I know people mark people with those types of things, and I didn't want that to be used. Cool.
No, in my ministry walk, we were trained that in order to understand, in order to talk about the Bible and Christian faith, we had to read and study three: the Bible, the Torah, and the Quran.
Yes.
And when you do that, you see that there's a lot of principles. Words are different, but a lot of principles that are the same. That are the same. So no, my goal is not to separate, well, by faith, but not this faith, but that faith. No.
Okay.
No. Judge not, lest ye be judged. My job is not to do that.
And I am grateful for that. Because again, I that's why I had to stop it real quick. So I make sure, because I didn't want people to get on and start commenting, thinking that you were saying that all Muslims need to get out. And I wanted just to clarify that.
Nope. Not at all.
And so I agree that part of the challenge in our society is the lack of a moral center, because we have come to a point where our moral center is winning. When our teams don't win, we set cities on fires. When our teams win, we set cities on fire. When our candidates win, we get excited. When our candidates, it's all about the win. And what we have turned into is that if you're not going to be part of us winning, then we don't want to support you. And I agree.
To the side. Yep.
We got to move. We just move into the win. We're just moving into the win. We're just moving to the win. And what it leads to is this place where you're talking about, where it's just about the win. It doesn't, like, people are not voting on policies that help people anymore. It's, what do I need to do to get the win? When you have people who are comfortable saying that this policy sucked when somebody else did it, but now that my people want to do it, it's a great policy. Or if this person sucked, but now that they're our nominee, now they're wonderful.
If it was a duck before, it's still a duck. I'm not going to pretend it's a pig now.
But that's part of the, and honestly, to your point, that's what happens. People want to talk about the data differently. And there are some nuances and context which may explain data differently, but you are absolutely right. Deal with what it says. If it's bad, be okay with it being bad, because once you accept that it's bad, you can make changes and make it better.
one of the things that I'd said to people in my election cycle was, if the city of Baltimore elects a mayor that can actually move the needle where the needle needs to go, regardless of who it may be, I'm all for it. If we can't, then there's a problem. And the problem is a problem we all got.
Everybody.
Simple as that. It's as simple as that. If I didn't win, but a candidate won that I knew, I felt confident, had a plan to move the city forward, I'm going to be all right with that. Not only am I going to be all right with that, I'm going to ask, okay, I didn't win, you up here, so how can I help you make sure we're still moving the needle in the right direction? That's what grown folk, real grown folk, properly grounded do. They don't have to be the one in the front with the win. They want to be a part of the team, the collective, to get the win for everyone.
But
we don't have that here.
No,
we don't have that.
You say here. Tell me where it does exist. Because
I mean here as in this society. I don't mean in this city.
That's my point. Nationwide, these are the types of things that we're dealing with. Again, people want the win. This is their job. And just like when I'm at work, I'm trying not to get fired. If I got a customer that comes in and they are all, if you've ever worked customer service, you know the ones we're talking about. The ones that everybody sees coming, like, and then all of a sudden you got a break. Somebody got to go to the bathroom. I'm gonna go check the fridge, and it's like not it. And whoever gets left is the person that has to handle. See, I've lived a couple of things. I've seen a couple of things, but if you had that, yes, how are you doing? Da 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 da. And you go back and forth, and sometimes you give them something they don't deserve just to make sure they don't wild out. The bully starts to run the show. They start to make the decisions, and because it's about the win, and your boss isn't going to have your back because your boss wants the cash.
Yeah.
And so the boss wants the cash, wants peace. So now you are left. If you want to keep the job, just do whatever you have to do to appease the crazy person, because everybody else is going to come to your restaurant because you have good food. The crazy person is going to disrupt all that, so you appease them. And this appeasing type of behavior is why, I'm going to talk about this later. The murders in Texas, the children who were murdered. I'm going to talk about that, not in this show, because I still need to process that. But you end up in this type of situation because nobody wants to give up the NRA money. Nobody wants to lose their job as a senator. Nobody wants to lose their job as a delegate or a representative. Nobody wants to lose their job as a mayor. So they do the things. They let the bullies, they let the crazy people run the city, run the system. Again, I keep forgetting my show notes. You got me excited, Pastor. You got me all worked up. But that's kind of I blame it on you, because this topic was going to get me there anyway. Because these are the things that are killing the Black community: the lack of education, the lack of food security, and having very few economic resources.
So let's talk about food security for a minute. And this is why I say you and I need to meet in person, because you need to come to my office, and I'm gonna tell you why. Okay. In my office right now, we have orange trees growing. In my office, we have pineapple growing. We have coffee growing. We have bay leaf tree growing. In addition to tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, string beans, cabbage, all the stuff. Now, the reason we have that growing in the office, and now our office is in a building downtown in the Inner Harbor. So it's not a place where you would think people would have dirt and plants. And that is precisely why I have dirt and plants, because I need people to understand. And I mean, when I say people, I mean everyday folk to understand. You do not have to wait for the elected folks to get their stuff together to put a supermarket in your community to know that you have access to good food on your table when you can grow it yourself. Now, people say, but I don't have any, I'm living in an apartment. I don't have any outdoor space. You got a window? You got some sunlight? Put a shelf up. Now, if I thought I could do it without messing up, I would turn the camera so that you could see what I'm talking about. Okay. So that's why I said we're going to have to meet in person, because
I'm with it. Next time we might just do this on location. I'm having a great time.
I will extend the invitation, and we need to do that. In my office right now, there are over 400 plants growing. And I said 400. Because I need people to understand that there is no reason in this day and age that you got to wait for your elected officials to decide that you should have access to food. So we teach people how to grow their food in containers, indoors all year if need be, and then indoor and out if you have a little bit of space, even a fire escape that you can put some things out on. There's no reason for people to be hungry. Now, the reason why hungry is so important, there's a long list of reasons, but the top one is when you send your children to school on an empty stomach and they get in that classroom after taking 2 or 3 buses and their stomach is talking louder than the teacher, they ain't learning nothing. That's number one. Now, we talk about health disparities and the difference between the health and the healthy systems in the Black and brown communities as opposed to the other communities. Part of that is nutrition. The things that's killing us, high blood pressure and diabetes. You know what helps take care of both of them? Good nutrition. But you can't have good nutrition if you don't have a supermarket, if you don't have access to good food. So good food means you can send your child to school in a place where their mind is ready to learn and receive because their belly is okay. It means that you have a better chance, a gooder odd. How about that? We're going to say a gooder odd of being around to see that child graduate and get married because your high blood pressure and your diabetes is under control because you've taken the salt out of your diet. You're actually understanding the value of herbs like oregano, basil, thyme to add flavor, because when you add flavor, you take out the salt because you no longer need it. There's some things that we are not being shown, that we have lost sight of, that would help for the longevity and the security and the wealth and the building of our communities. Absolutely. A lot of it starts with food.
Yes.
When you were younger and you went to somebody's house, a lot of times your grandmother would tell you, don't go to somebody's house, show up on their doorstep with empty hands. You bring something. 9 times out of 10, what do you bring?
You got
food.
Lips.
What do you bring? Food. Something to eat or drink. So we have to understand what that eat or drink means, what that eat or drink does, and how we need to do that to be able to minimize the diabetes in our communities and minimize the high blood pressure in our communities and increase the lifespan in our communities. So we don't have folks that are regularly teaching us these things. No. So we kind of teach ourselves a little bit. And quite honestly, the gardening for us started about 10, 15 years ago. 4 kids at home, my husband and I, and at one point my mother and my grandmother were living with us. And my mother and my grandmother both had health issues and concerns. And when I looked at all the mouths that sat around the table and the cost of providing the healthy food, I said to my husband, okay, we're going to have to grow some of this. He said, but you can't keep a plant alive. I said, you're right. But we're going to have to figure that out. And we're going to have to grow something.
We're going to have to make it work.
We're going to have to. Because frozen vegetables are too expensive and cans got too much sodium. So farmers market, produce market is out of the budget because they're more costly. So we're going to have to grow some things. And that's how it started again. Just like what education did with fighting for things for my own kids. Right. The nutritional component of what we fight for food security, started from necessity.
And I think that for, especially for a lot of Black women, that is much of the story. That is much of, had to do it. Was it, one of the best entrepreneurs I've ever met. I would put her up against any Bill Gates, Elon Musk, anybody every day. I'd put her on, kind of like Ginger Rogers. She makes all the decisions that they do, but she does it backwards in heels. When they used to compare Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers, how he was such a great dancer. Like, no, she's actually better.
Yes, because she could do it backwards. You're right.
And in heels. Don't get it twisted.
Mm-hmm.
But this woman does global shipping, engages global manufacturing, and does it because she had to. When you talk to her, she's like, my kids needed to eat. The place I was working didn't have enough. So I was like, I got it. I got to find something to do. And but the other thing that I also recognize that I find is amazing, again, particularly about the Black women I know, is that you all take your lived experiences and you build it into the solution. And it always, and I can't think of one example where it has not been true, but every business model, everything that they do, it is designed to support people who are like them. Like this young lady, she has stifled her own business growth because she was like, girls in my neighborhood should be able to afford what I offer. She could go to their like neighborhoods, like she's in Baltimore and Bowie for a long time. Bowie was like, we give you this, the same thing you're talking about. We give you this incentive to come down, this incentive to come down. And she was like, but then the girls in Baltimore, in South Baltimore, nobody's gonna come. They won't be able to afford the people who are left. And she decided to do that because the money was necessary, but it was still this part of, this is my community. I'm not going to turn my back on my sisters.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I hear that in the way that you were describing your experience and your engagement. And I just want to shout it out. Good people doing good things. I don't think we do enough to celebrate those.
You know, and it's funny. When we started growing things, I have long nails. So I don't necessarily want to get that messed up. So, you know, you use the tools to dig in the dirt. And then in the dirt, I found things like worms. Unless I'm out with my grandfather fishing, I don't see worms. So we started growing in containers. My husband's like, is there anything else special you need to do to try and get this thing work? I like, look, we need dirt from the stove because they know worms in there. We need containers, so I make sure the worms ain't getting in there. And we're going to grow stuff. And he's like, okay. Now, because of doing that for so many years, we now have a system that we can share with people, even in an apartment where you might not have an inch of outdoor space, how you can still, right here, I'm sitting in the den in the house, and there's a shelf right here. I'm going to turn the camera just a little bit, just so you can see. There's a shelf.
Oh, wow.
There. And when I say green stuff, I'm like so not kidding.
Oh, that's a beautiful, what kind of flower is that, the white one?
That was a birthday gift. It's an orchid, I believe.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So in here these are all 2-liter bottles, empty 2-liter bottles, cut the top, put holes in the bottom. They're each growing kale. Those kale in a couple of weeks will go outside. On this shelf, we've got a little bit more kale, and we've got some of our corn seeds, and this one's mint. Now, when I say we teach folks how to be able to grow food and keep food on their table, that they, there's ways of doing things. I'm about to show you something real quick. You know how you go in the supermarket in the produce aisle and you buy cabbage, and your choices are usually red, green, or maybe Napa cabbage, depending on where you shop.
Okay.
You know how you get the cabbage home, and there's that round, hard part when you're making cabbage nobody wants to eat because it takes forever to cook down. You cut that part off and throw it out. Well, when you cut that part off and you don't throw it out, and you put it in water, it roots. When the roots are a little bit longer, you put that in dirt, and from your groceries, you start growing your food.
All right, so look. I feel you a little disrespectful right now. I'm gonna tell you why. You come up with a whole new show topic in the last 3 minutes. That's what you decide to do. You just disrespectful. I do not appreciate that. But you know what?
No.
You got to come back now. You got to come back. How about that?
But how do you know that wasn't part of my plan in the beginning? Maybe it's excellent.
I want to think highly of myself, so I just came up with it.
Okay.
It don't matter what you actually did. It's the story in my head.
So I'm extending an invitation that if you'd like, we could do the next one in person. Absolutely. And you can see. So June 16th, we have an event coming up. It's $65 a ticket. It's not a cheap ticket, but it's not a break your arm ticket either. And it's going to be at a location that is the site of one of our board members has gifted us land to be able to put up 4 10-foot by 20-foot greenhouses. So we are going to make those greenhouses where we'll actually grow stuff, but we'll actually have hands-on classes for people that want to come in and learn how to plant and learn how to grow and how to take care of their plants. That will be our hands-on creative space as well as our urban farm.
That's wonderful.
Because you can tell people about it, but they got to see it. They got to feel it. So everything that you will be served to eat at that reception event on June 16th will be things that we are growing. So you'll be able to see not only that you can grow the food, but understand what you can do with the food, then how to preserve it, whether it's something you want to freeze, water can, or pressure can. From the beginning to the end, that's what we do. So it's $65 a ticket. It's June 16th. If you go to our website, well, no, because it's not on the website yet. But if you go to urbanengage.org, you'll see some of the things that we're doing and ongoing. If you go to Urban Engagement on Facebook, because I tend to update the Facebook a little bit more regularly. Tech is not my thing, so I like to get my hands dirty. But if you go to Urban Engagement on Facebook, if you follow Live Right on Instagram, you will see pictures. And we have gotten to a place where we're trying to do reels at least 3 to 5 times a week that show, matter of fact, you go to my Instagram and you share that thing, because on there we show the different plans. We show that it's not just about talking. We show about what kind of limited space you can use to be able to still grow. Every container in our outdoor space right now came from the dollar store.
Oh yeah, no, don't get it twisted. Actually,
the reason for that is not because I'm promoting the dollar store, but I'm promoting people being able to live within their budget and means and not have to break the bank to save a couple of bucks by growing their food. You can use containers and things you have in the house, like I said when I showed you the kale, empty 2-liter bottles. So we're all about recycling stuff to make it productive so that you don't have to break the bank, but you can put the good food on the table. So join us June 16th. Go to Urban Engagement on Facebook, Live Right on Instagram to see the pictures. I'm around and easy to find. And we got to stay alive long enough to be able to see our babies and our grandbabies grow up. And the way we do that is by getting some of these systems fixed and at the very least, keeping some good, healthy food on the table.
Sounds like a plan. I always appreciate when people come with their pitch already done. Like I game recognized game, and that was kind of family like. So I appreciate that.
So you need to come by our office. Our whole you would love it, the feel as well as the actuality of what we're doing, but the feel that you get from when you walk in the door. It's all about family, because each community is built up with family after family after family. So if we don't rebuild the family, we will never fix our communities.
I love it. Thank you so much, Pastor Shannon Wright. Ladies and gentlemen, make sure you follow her on Instagram, Facebook, and urbanengage.org. Doing a lot of great work in the community, really working to transform the lives of the communities that we serve. Pastor Wright, thank you so much. And I'm looking forward, one, because I'm coming down and checking out, because this sounds amazing. And I'm looking forward to the next time we're able, and actually before so I'm going to do this. This is actually like a voice note for my staff real quick. Before the 16th comes up, let's make sure that we get her online and do a couple of little vignettes of her producing stuff. We'll see if she has some additional content already that we can make part of the show. So
sure do.
I know I'm gonna forget it. So I figure if I do it now, when they watch it, they're like, let's write, because they'll give me my show note, because I know they're gonna have some things to say about the way I perform today. So it's whatever. It's my show. It's my show. I can say stuff. It's just I have to hear their voices on the end of it.
You can say what you want to say. You just got to pay the bill on it when you get off the air.
Touche. I appreciate you, and I'm looking forward to the next time I have you on.
Thank you. Same here. Thank you. This has been wonderful.
For me as well. The cool part is that not only do I know dope people, I get to meet dope people. Like I had never met Pastor Wright. Well, if I had, it might have been, when I was drunk or something. We was at a happy hour. Because that happened to me. Because the early 2000s, separate issue. But I just met her today, and to have a conversation with somebody who understands kind of the root causes of some of the economic and some of the educational challenges that we have, that's wonderful. So not only do I know dope people, I get to meet dope people. I love this job. And again, big ups to Donnie Glover, founder of BlackUSA.news and Be More News, for giving us this platform to do this and have this kind of fun and share really meaningful information about it. So make sure that you all hit up Pastor Wright at urbanengage.org. All right, we will be back tomorrow.